Well, hey folks, this is John with Ozarks Backroads with you. We've got the mighty CFMOTO, our 23 CFMOTO Ibex 800T out in the woods today, and I wanted to stop and just do a quick little 1,000 mile review on this bike. I've ridden it in pretty much all the conditions that I'll be riding it in. I've taken it on some long trips, loaded down with all my camping gear. I've been camping with this bike. I've ridden it in the woods. I've ridden it on fairly long stints on the highway and the twisty back roads. So I'm starting to get a pretty good feel of what I've got here with this bike, so I thought I'd pass some of that on to y'all in case anybody's interested in this bike. So we'll start with just the specs, and then we'll talk about the riding and the comfort and the things that I've noticed about the bike. So the engine on this bike is the KTM 790 engine out of the 790 Adventure, 790 Duke. It's 799cc parallel twin. It's a spunky little motor. It's got a lot of pep, pulls really good. It's lively, it's got a lot of character. It's just really a neat motor, and it's fun to ride. The fuel injection and the ABS on this bike is by Bosch. So it's the same as the KTM models that uses the Bosch fuel injection. The weight on the bike is 509 pounds wet, so when she's all ready to go with fuel, it's 509 pounds, so it's not a lightweight by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not too bad either. The fuel capacity on the bike is 5 gallons, 19 liters, and I find it to be adequate. I get about somewhere around 180 miles to 200 is when I'm looking for fuel, around 200 miles. So on my camping trip down in Arkansas I just took, I was able to get 200 miles out of a tank, and when I filled it up it held 4.1 gallons. So I still had 9/10 of a gallon at least left in the tank at 200 miles. So I think that's pretty decent range. So the front forks are by KYB. They're upside down cartridge forks, fully adjustable, 43 millimeters. You can adjust the compression and dampening, the rebound dampening, and the preload on the front end. So I'm pretty happy with the rear shock as well. It's by KYB. It is adjustable for preload, and you can adjust the rebound dampening. I don't believe there is compression dampening on the rear shock, but I find the spring rate to be quite good on the rear as well. Overall, I believe the bike is sprung very well. So we've got about 6 inches of travel, a little over on the front, 160 millimeters on the front forks. The rear shock is at 150 millimeters, just about 6 inches. It's not a huge amount of travel, but I find it to be adequate, and it works pretty well off-road. So the brakes on the bike are by J1, which is an Italian manufacturer. They make a lot of brakes for a lot of manufacturers over in Europe. You'll find J1 brakes on a lot of motorcycles. A lot of the brand name bikes like Triumph and KTM. If you see a caliper with that says KTM on it, it's a J1 caliper. J1 makes a lot of calipers and brake components for a lot of the European manufacturers. They're very good brakes. They're owned by Brembo. Brembo owns J1, and I find the braking to be quite good. The lines, the brake lines are steel braided lines. They're hard lines, so you don't get that wooden feel. You have very good feedback from the brakes. So unlike the Tiger, when you first hit that brake, it won't toss you over the windshield. But as you apply a little bit of pressure, you can really feel the brakes working, and you can tell what's going on. So the rear brake is also a J1. It's a 2-piston caliper on a 260 millimeter disc and with hard lines, and the rear brake is quite good on this bike. The tires on the bike are, the front has a 110/80/19 and the back has the 150/70/17. So the wheels are tubeless. They're spoked tubeless. They're the same wheels you find on the 790 Adventure, 890 Adventure. Same manufacturer, different sizes, but the same tubeless system, the same manufacturer on the wheels. The bike has full LED lighting all the way around, front, turn signals, headlights, tail lights, all of it's LED. And it also has fog lights, they're LED as well. We've got a 7-inch TFT display, a very nice display. It displays a lot of information. It's got a couple of screens, a main riding screen, and then there's also an information screen that'll show you, besides all the information that's on the main screen, you get your tire pressure monitoring. It'll show you the tire pressure and the tire temperatures on both of the tires. So there's a lot of information available with the TFT. Everything that I've wanted is on there and more. So what's the bike come with? Well, it comes with a center stand, cruise control. It's got a couple of riding modes, a sport and a rain mode. It's got Bluetooth connectivity. You can do on-screen navigation if you Bluetooth it to your phone. It's got a heated grips and heated seat. It's got a quick shifter. The windshield is adjustable. It's got knobs here. You just unscrew the knobs and raise the windshield up and down. It's got 2 USB ports up here on the dash on the left side, and then it's got a power port, a 12-volt cigarette lighter style power port on the right side up here. I want to talk a little bit about the comfort and the riding, how it is to ride the bike. So I find the seat to be quite good. It's very supportive. I've ridden, the longest stint that I've ridden is 3.5 hours on the bike without getting off. I did stop at a couple of stoplights on the way to a camping trip I took, but I didn't feel like I needed to get off. I wasn't sore at all, so that's pretty good. The seat height is 32.5 inches, I believe, which is, it's not real tall. It's fairly narrow in the front, so you can get your feet down good. The bike doesn't feel top heavy. It's very easy to maneuver when you get off-road in the gravel and stuff, turning around, maneuvering the bike. It just doesn't feel top heavy at all, and it feels much lighter than it is. The standing position on the bike is quite good. This is the only bike that I believe that I've ever owned that I'm not going to put bar risers on the handlebars. I think they're fine. They're plenty tall. The standing position, I'm not straight armed. I've got some relaxed position there, and the riding position is good. So I'm going to leave the bars alone. I won't put bar risers on it. The foot pegs are quite good as well. They have a rubber insert that I've taken out of mine, but just to lower them a little bit. I'm not a fan of rubber inserts. I like to have the teeth that my boot can get a hold of on the foot pegs, so I took my rubber inserts off. The bike travels very well. It's got a pretty high 6th gear. It gets down the road really nicely. At 4,500 RPM, the bike's traveling about 70 miles an hour. So that's pretty good for an 800cc, you know, a middleweight adventure bike. That's not bad at all. I did load this bike down with a lot of camping gear, and usually, like on the Tiger, that really makes it difficult to ride. The Tiger gets kind of sketchy and the front wanders around on the road, and you're never really sure about it when you get a pretty good amount of gear on it. This bike did not have that issue. It rode very nicely. It didn't really feel that top heavy. I noticed a little difference, but it wasn't significant, and it still went through the twisties. It was just a lot of fun to ride, even loaded, and I wasn't concerned about the extra weight or the handling of the bike. So as far as being able to carry a load and travel, this bike in my book is a winner. No motorcycle is perfect. I've never owned a perfect motorcycle. If I ever get one, I won't have to buy any more motorcycles. I'll just stick with the perfect bike that I have, but so far that's not happened to me. And this bike is no exception. There are things about this bike that I think need to be improved, and there are a couple of things that I think are probably going to put some people off. So this bike has only been out for about a year and a half in the rest of the world, and this is the first year here in the United States for this model. So the bike is not a mature a model for CFMOTO. It's the first generation, the first crack out of the box, and like any motorcycle that's a first generation bike, there are some things that are going to need to be addressed and need to be worked out. So I believe the fuel mapping on this bike is too aggressive. It's not snatchy off throttle and on throttle. You don't get that jerk. That's not the problem. It's just that the rate at which it applies throttle when you twist the grip is pretty aggressive. It's pretty quick. The bike's ready to go. It makes it fun in the twisties and when you're playing, but when you're traveling or just, you know, going through town, it's just, in my opinion, it's too aggressive. A lot of times I'll put it in rain mode, which calms that down quite a bit. And when I ride off-road in the gravel and dirt and stuff, I put it in rain mode as well, just to control that throttle a little better. And rain mode isn't bad. So I believe the aggressive fueling is probably going to put some people off. That's something to think about. Ride one of these if you're thinking about buying one. Ride it first and see if that's something you can live with. The other thing that I'm not a fan of on this bike, and it's probably nothing that will ever be done to fix it because it's just the nature of the beast, and that is the vibey motor. The KTM engine, the 790, is a very vibey motor. The motor likes to have some RPM on it. If you're in high gear, say out on the highway, you really need to be up around 4,000 RPM for the motor to smooth out. At 4,000, the vibes go away and it is very smooth from there on up. But below that, you feel the pulses, the cylinders firing, the pulses from the engine. It's not a out of balance thing. The motor's very smooth when you get on up above 4,000 RPM. It's just a V-twin vibe, the pulses from the cylinders firing, and they're pretty pronounced in this little motor. I don't, it's not that big of a deal. I've had a lot of vibey bikes in my life, and that's just the way motorcycles are. But if you're sensitive to that and it's going to irritate you forever, you probably ought to go look at a different bike. So that's just a quick overview of the bike. I've got about 1,100 miles on it now. So one of the things that I always want to know when I'm watching a motorcycle review is I want to know if the person that owns the bike that's doing the review, if they were to buy a bike again, would they buy this bike again, or would they go maybe to a different bike, look at a different bike? To me, that's really tells me a lot about the experience that that person's had with that motorcycle. I can tell you, for me, from my experience with the bike so far, that yeah, I would definitely buy this motorcycle today again. I think it's a great bike, and for the money, for $10,500 here in the US, with everything this bike has and as well as it performs, it's a no-brainer for me. I didn't hesitate for 1 minute. So this bike is designed by the Kiska group that designs all of KTM's motorcycles. Kiska has done, they're an Austrian design firm, and they've done all of KTM's motorcycles since 1992 or 93. So Kiska designed this bike as well. So it's no big surprise that the geometry of the frame, you know, the engine's the same. It's the same engine. The geometry of the frame is exactly the same as a 790 KTM. So it's not a surprise if you know who designed it. It's the same people that did the 790 KTM and the 890. And then all the drivetrain is the same. It is the KTM engine. The wheels are the same. I ordered a sprocket for it. I just ordered a sprocket for a 790 KTM. Same sprocket. So it's a lot of this is KTM. So I was very excited when I started looking into this bike, and it was released last year, and I started watching reviews. I've probably seen over 100 reviews on this bike from people overseas that have bought these, and I haven't seen a bad review yet on this bike. So knowing all of the components that are in this bike and the design team that built it, and the oversight of KTM with CFMOTO, their partnership, I had no qualms about putting my money down, and I believe the bike would be pretty decent quality, and I'm still of that opinion. Well folks, I appreciate y'all hanging out with me in the woods talking about this motorcycle. I hope I gave you some information that might be useful if you're considering buying one. I suggest try to find a way to ride one before you buy it. I would suggest that for any motorcycle. I invite y'all to come back and see me. We'll go somewhere and do something else. Till I catch up with you again, y'all take care of yourselves. We'll catch you next time.